Welcome to Opera San Jose Talks. This is Opera San Jose General Director Larry Hancock, and with me today are Cassandra Zoé Velasco and Colin Ramsey. We will be talking chiefly about Mozart's opera Cosi fan tutte, which OSJ will open at the California Theater in San Jose on Saturday, September 9, for a run of 6 performances. So welcome, Cassandra. Debut at Opera San Jose.
Thank you very much for
First
having
visit
me.
to our little town.
Yes, I'm enjoying a lot.
You can actually say the name of our town.
Yeah, San Jose. It's kind of easy for a Mexican singer.
In San Francisco, they can't say it.
Yeah.
They say San Jose.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like it's N-O-S-E, San Jose.
Wow.
And they think you're weird if you say it the way a Spanish-speaking person would say it.
Yeah.
Like ordering Italian food in an Italian restaurant, too.
Exactly.
We always...
So I get even with them. I say San Francisco. And Colin.
Hi.
You're an old-timer here.
Now? Oh, no, only a year. This is production number 5.
Yes, he's only done 5 shows here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Colin did Raimondo, his debut role, Basilio in Barber, Father Palmer in Silent Night, and then the blind Colline.
The famous blind Colline.
Awesome. I didn't.
I made the request
Locally famous.
that I did a stupid thing with Bohème. We had just done Silent Night, which is the first Christmas of the Great War, 1914.
Yeah.
And immediately following was La Bohème. And I had basically the same cast, the same conductor, and the same stage director.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And I was thinking, well, why can't it just be the guys back from the war?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. That was great. Everybody loved it. We had a great time. So
That's interesting.
And Colleen was the
Yeah.
only one who had a vestige of the war, and he had been blinded.
yeah.
Awesome.
It was a challenge at times, and it was really in the end it really worked well. Everybody loved it. So, and now I get my sight back, and I get to prance around stage with a turban. Or I don't remember if we had the rehearsals
With
or
your mushroom.
turbans. The mustaches we definitely
Yeah.
have. But
Oh yeah, they're turbans.
yeah, they're building the new. We have the costumes are gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Yes.
For this one.
Yeah.
So we get to glam it up after 2 shows of being in the dirt and poverty. And that's fun for me.
Yeah, it is fun. And yes, what an elegant age. This is my favorite period for women's clothes.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Women's clothes, Pompadour. I think she had the best taste of any woman in Europe. Just amazing hair, amazing clothes, and it deteriorates after she leaves. Men's clothes get better. Women's clothes did kind of go the way of all flesh.
The darn peignets are going to be the death of us, I think.
Oh my God. We're having fun with them.
We are.
Yeah.
You girls are doing. Christina was saying how ridiculous when she was even just running the show with Amanda. And she didn't have peignets and Amanda did. And she was saying, this is so annoying. Every time I sit down to realize that I have to move 3 feet over so I don't sit on the thing,
Yeah, it takes some time.
Some getting used to, for
get
sure.
used to it, yeah.
That's we have a little summer training program for young singers, 18 to 28.
Yeah.
And one of the things they do every single day is movement in period costumes.
That's so important. Yeah, because the first time that you use it, you don't know how to sing with them. You don't know how to move with them, and it's a lot of rules about the arms, the way that you put your arms, your hands,
where you can
everything.
put your hands exactly,
because it was a very different style. Yeah.
And we can't do much of it with true accuracy because the audience won't get it.
Well, just not helpful in storytelling for them.
Yeah, being able the way a woman walked. I love the way you and Dorabella. I mean, you and your older sister Fiordiligi have worked out the walk.
Yeah,
because to walk correctly in this period, you can't see that anyone has taken a step. It just floats.
Exactly.
Well,
a little bit like the geisha movement. It's all about keep the
tiny
hips in
little
the same
steps,
place.
very fast. Yeah.
Suzuki in training.
Yes, I had a good Suzuki training. So.
And I've only ever seen it done once, and it's creepy. It just looks wrong. It looks strange. People, the women just floating by.
Yes.
It looks so affected to us. So we've worked it out so that Fiordiligi takes big steps.
Yeah, she's stronger.
And then you skitter along behind the little sister.
I'm her shadow. In this show, I'm her shadow.
Totally.
Like, I'm all the time behind her, and I admire her. I think that's...
Yeah, she's your big sister. You're going to be like her.
Yeah, it's like... And she's the only woman that I really know, like she's like my mother, so in some way.
And isn't that the great mystery?
Yeah.
Is these young, unmarried women living in a house in Naples.
Exactly.
With no grown-ups.
I've actually never thought about that, where everyone's parents are. I don't know why I've never thought of that, but...
I had to. I mean, because for Amanda and for me, it's like, okay, who you are in Fiordiligi's and in Dorabella's life, right? It's like you need to figure out or to create a story.
Oh, yeah, backstory.
Yeah.
I once asked a stage director, it didn't get far, it didn't get past my asking. I once asked, during the overture, could we please stage Mom and Dad leaving with trunks, going away and saying goodbye to their daughters and bringing in Don Alfonso to look after them?
That's smart. Yes.
So they'll have a chaperone, right? They're not home alone in the house. Yes. And then, of course, I wanted to see servants moving around in the background, doing things. The first part was discarded, of course, because that's useless, right? But they did keep the servants in the household.
Yeah.
And we have Despina.
We do have Despina.
Yeah.
Well, and others.
Yes.
Because there are all these liveried servants coming in and out and moving things around.
And we have them all kind of, Brad's got them showing up at various times and kind of playing the parts as the military and everything.
Yeah, they get used a lot.
Yeah.
The supers get lots of roles in the show. For those of you who don't know what Cosi fan tutte is, because we just sort of dove in, I should mention that Cosi fan tutte is one of Mozart's most mature works. He died 2 years after its premiere. And it's a thoroughly of the Age of Enlightenment concept. And it was Alexander Pope who, at the very dawn of the Enlightenment, said, whatever is right. Saying that God, the divine clockmaker, had put the universe in motion, and everything that he did is correct and it is right. So just relax and go along for the ride, because God did this. Well, Diderot, who is one of the authors of the Radical Enlightenment, said, I cannot hold with Mr. Pope. Evil exists. And it is not because of some ridiculous apple. So that starts us down the road that's going to take us to Voltaire.
Right.
And to the age that Mozart is born into, where the idea that God is in charge of everything and his eye is on the sparrow and I know he watches me, that just goes away. It disintegrates among the well-to-do. And people begin to have to take responsibility for their actions. And with that, Diderot also says, everything must be examined, studied, and proven with logic and rationality before you accept it as a truth. Presumptions are not allowed among thinking people. And that's what this whole opera is. These two young men have a presumption that their girlfriends love them alone. Biggest egos in the world. And they would never look at another man. And they're being told by their buddy Don Alfonso that that's silly talk.
Yeah.
They're people just like you are. And they draw swords, right? So
that's quite to them that's like the most outrageous statement in the world, that these two young girls could fall for anyone else. They think that just is totally unreasonable,
a ridiculous concept.
And,
well, of course,
and thus we have a ridiculous opera to follow, I guess.
One of the things that I like about this opera the most is it really does lead to real soul searching. And thank God for the Enlightenment, because it's about normal people.
Yeah.
You're not portraying gods and goddesses or heroes from an ancient past, and you're not becoming the idea of someone or an abstraction of a person. You're an actual person with the feelings, responses, suffering, joy of any person.
That's what I think makes this opera one of the hardest to do in Mozart, because, in Figaro and Giovanni, it's not that they're not boring characters at all, but there's a little more cut and dry and information, and there's resolution. Like at the end of Don Giovanni, he goes down to hell, and everyone, and then they sing their moral at the end, and that's it. And at the end of Marriage of Figaro, is the Count going to keep being good? Who really knows? But he still, is forgiven, and Figaro and Susanna get married, and end of the opera. But in Cosi, it's there's this weird. You probably feel the same.
Sometimes it's very slow, and sometimes it's so fast the way that they change ideas and concepts and everything, and it's very hard to to make the changes work, and to make the audience understand with the acting.
Where we're at. Yeah, and that's something we talk about all the time, because Dorabella and Guglielmo are the first to get together, and how quickly does that happen? At what point? The
question is why they are changing so fast? They're lovers
in a day. That's the other great when you think about the actual time period of this opera. It seems like all of these Mozart da Pontes happen in 24 hours.
They do.
Yeah.
They obey the unities.
Exactly. It's
place,
one day.
Time, and character. The unities have to be observed. The ancient unities, because this is classical, right? They're looking back to old theatrical forms. They're actually looking to French forms, but they looked back to the old forms. So the unities are very important. It all has to happen within 24 hours. It can only happen in one place. Nobody can go to some other country or some other thing. And all the characters must be introduced in the first act. So no surprises at the end.
And that's totally how this goes. And, we start at the beginning as, for the couples. We're going to leave Alfonso and Despina out of this for a bit, but the sisters and Ferrando and Guglielmo, they start one way in the beginning, and then Act 2 starts, and you're kind of in the same place, but kind of not. And then basically in the course of one act, the whole thing just falls apart and then gets put back together that. Really,
in 2 seconds.
Guglielmo and Dorabella, fall for each other and run off, and finally Fiordiligi cracks and runs off with Ferrando, and Guglielmo and Ferrando are at each other's throats, and the girls seem totally happy. At least as far as all that goes. The wedding, they're great. The guys are ready to kill the girls and each other, and probably Alfonso, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? They make mistakes.
Yes.
But that's what women do. That's what kind of Alfonso says, which is terrible, but it's, this is what women do. They're fickle. He's kind of like, the Duke of Mantua in training or something.
He doesn't say fickle, does he?
No, but he says that this is what...
I think the implication is a little deeper, that human beings can be acted on, and they are affected by what goes on around them, and be prepared. But isn't also Alfonso who says to you, you love these girls?
He does, but he also says, and you would put your trust in women? There's a very Masonic thing that goes through this score for me, it has the same problem that Magic Flute does as a contemporary viewer. Zarastro says, he says several times, and the speaker, you would trust a woman.
They have a real problem with the Queen.
Yeah. And in this, it's Alfonso very much has the same thing, right in those first trios, the whole thing isn't, he's saying, a woman who's faithful is like a phoenix. It's this thing that everyone talks about and everyone knows about, but no one's ever seen it.
Well, the missing thing
it's really
is
terrible,
here.
Right?
Yeah, but the missing element is it is already understood that men are dogs. That's taken for granted.
I think
men are going to go have sex with whoever's convenient.
Although I don't think they view that as necessarily a negative thing.
No, they view it as a positive thing.
It's just that it's not even really spoken of.
It's not even brought up. It needn't be said. It is understood.
Part of the opera.
Men are absolutely not faithful.
Yeah.
But that's not it's not important or seemingly relevant in this opera, whereas I guess in Marriage of Figaro there's...
Well, not necessarily. For example, when Despina is singing in her aria and she she shows to the
She says,
girls
yeah,
that
you
they
don't
also
have
have
the
the
scenes.
option
Yeah.
to play exactly as a man. That is not a rule to being the good
Totally.
woman all the time.
So what you're missing
Yeah.
are the scenes with Despina that you're not in.
Yeah.
You have your scenes with
Despina is the man.
Alfonso.
Yeah, exactly. Despina totally is like.
So what
Yes.
Alfonso is for you, Despina is for them.
For us, yes.
And it's very well balanced.
Yeah,
I think so.
It's just not well balanced in Alfonso's mind.
Right. And that's kind of, I mean, Alfonso being the sort of De Ponte-ish
Yeah.
character in this. That, I mean, as a modern person, I think that's one of the big challenges in the piece is that, I mean, the opera is called Cosi fan tutte. I mean, I think the De Ponte title was Scuola degli Amanti, right?
Yes,
The School
that's
for
good.
Lovers, which is
Right.
much more egalitarian.
Yeah.
But the producer's idea and everything is much more about this notion of Cosi fan tutte, which specifically refers to women.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of this performance in particular is the vision of Brand, because he is working in this idea of the
Scuola degli Amanti, yeah, there we go. School of Lovers, yeah.
School of Lovers. And I like that because in general, people at the end of the performance can look at my character as a bad girl, you know?
Totally.
Like the one that was playing all the time. And it's not true. In the vision of Brand, like you can see all the transition in Dorabella's psychology, like being a girl who has not another kind of experience or vision or ideas. And at the end, she's a woman and she's able to choose and to take decisions in her life. And that's very interesting. That's the way.
Oh yeah,
yeah, right.
It makes all of our scenes, I think, way more interesting, and it makes
yeah.
her much more interesting because she is. It's so easy for her to just turn into like, you know,
Despina.
yeah, like, oh great, I'm allowed to go like, you know, sleep with whoever I want. Wonderful, I'm just going to
Yeah.
go do that in the very next scene.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot more to that and her growth.
Yes.
And we've really, I think, worked hard to
Yeah.
put that in.
And we have this beautiful duet when we are singing, and it's exactly like the first love, the first time that you are in love with somebody, and like you are discovering the other's heart, the other's eyes, like.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is such a beautiful
yeah, it's high
show.
school. It's like the most
Exactly.
beautiful thing about your like, you know, high school first love kind of whatever.
Oh my God, he touched
Because
my
it's
hand.
it's
Like,
so
yeah,
real
the
and so
excitement and,
you're like tingling all over, and
Oh,
and the
yeah.
duet. I mean, it's just so beautiful, and there is this kind of like simple naivete about it, but at the same time, it's really honest and,
and a lot
deep
of passion there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing I keep discovering about Mozart. I had no idea that Mozart was my very favorite composer. I thought it was Rachmaninoff and Chopin,
Right.
you know?
Right.
But now that I'm old, Mozart is, as everybody says in every book, right? Multi-layered. And you don't discover it until you've lived with it. Mm-hmm. And you lived with it for now. I've lived with Mozart. My first Mozart role, I was 19, right? And now I'm 67. So, and I've produced how much Mozart,
Yeah.
right?
My God.
Quite a lot. And then seen Mozart all over the world. But even today was yesterday we had the first read through for the first chair strings. Mm-hmm. So I stood in the back of the room, first day with the conductor who's working with them for the first time. I don't want to be obvious. So I stood in the back of the room and listened to that, and I thought, this is not easy music, because what they have in front of them is just their own little part. They've no clue all this other stuff that's happening around them. They're just reading it right off the score, right? And so he started singing Guglielmo.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that they could hear these crazy syncopated entrances that they all have in these strange little, just one little note, and then resting for 5 measures and one little note. And that's so hard to do. Yeah. And especially all at once together, right? That's really hard to do. So once he started singing, then the cellist says, oh, that makes so much more sense.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's this really this one in particular to me seems so like it's like a puzzle.
Exactly.
But or it's more like a machine or something with lots of tiny little, like a Swiss watch, all these little pieces interlocking and moving, and if any one part of it kind of falls out, the whole thing doesn't entirely make sense. But when it's all there, it's perfect. It's this insane.
What I love about this cast is all of your voices match.
That's good to know.
It's really
All of your voices
trying, I guess.
Yes.
No, you all have similar vocal production. I
think
have
so.
I have a theory.
Yeah.
I believe that some voices sound like oboes, and other voices sound like clarinets. And we have a full consort of clarinets.
That's good.
So it all blends so beautifully. Not one voice bites through the texture.
No.
They're all coming through together as a full ensemble. By the way, the Mozart ensembles.
Oh,
Great. This is a really fun one.
Genius.
It's not.
yeah.
I guess Fiordiligi really for her and Ferrando, it's more of an aria show. But like Alfonso doesn't really have an aria. Like
No.
nothing excerptable. I mean, I have 2 arias, but neither of them are particularly like really like incredibly fun to sing or excited. Like nobody's like, man, you know what I can't wait to sing is like Donne Mie, and nobody, you know, like that's not, you know, nobody's like, oh, I really want to audition with that. It's a, you know, you want to sing Figaro or Leporello or
Right.
you know, something like that. But it's the ensembles. It's like our duet is like one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really hard, but
I love
really
the
fun to
trio.
sing.
Oh,
the trio.
The trio is like.
Soave.
I wait all day, you know, to sing that trio because it's so beautiful, so smart, so soft and elegant, and no elegant, like human.
Yeah.
It
so
stops
human.
time.
Exactly. Exactly.
Occasionally, there's a piece of music that stops time.
Yes.
It's almost always soft things.
Yes.
In Silent Night, it was the Komm Frühling, the
Oh, yeah,
duet
that
for the
just
tenor and
was
soprano.
incredible.
It just stopped time. And it worked every single time. The whole audience just fell into a complete hush. How brilliant was Putz to start it out as just like a folk song, right? Like
Yeah.
like a
Oh my
Liebes Lieder
gosh.
Waltz, okay? It just starts that way, and then the tenor can't go on. He just completely chokes up. He can't go on. So the soprano turns to him. He's her lover, right? She turns to him. Are you okay? Clearly not.
Oh, yeah.
And they take a minute. They're performing for the Crown Prince. And they get their act together and they start over. But the second start, it's like they started mezzo forte the first time around, just very straightforward. But the start over is piano. And then it grows into a thing. And the whole audience is enraptured. At every performance, it never once failed.
It was such a beautiful moment. And Soave is very much like one of those. You're like trudging, like you're going through the show, and the guys are like, we're going to do this bet. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. And then we show up and we start the masquerade of like, okay, we're going off to war, and you guys are so upset. And then just like it just stops in this very honest moment.
Exactly.
Amidst everything else that's essentially, I mean, you had the opening scene, which was a lot of bravado and bluster, but was real. And then everything after that is basically put on except for your duet, right?
My duet.
The duet with Fiordiligi.
Right. Other moment.
I'm going to have to step in a minute. You finish your thought, and then I'll step in.
And then it just then you get this beautiful, simple moment where even, I mean, Alfonso is doing his own. He's in a totally different place with all this, but it's almost like he buys into it just the same way, the emotion of it.
Yeah. Maybe he questions himself in
Yeah,
some way.
yeah.
Because we don't know Don Alfonso's past. That's the other thing, right?
That's often a big point of discussion for this show.
You have a lot of ways to look at
him and
Alfonso.
Despina, where they fall in all this, why
Exactly.
he's doing, like, why is this old dude saying, okay, boys, like, you think your girlfriends are faithful? Let's make a huge bet on this, number one, and then we'll just, do all this crazy nonsense for a whole day. And you have to do exactly what I say. Like, why even go to the trouble of all that to prove that point? It seems ridiculous. But
Well, it's all born of Enlightenment thinking,
Yeah.
okay? How important it is not to accept presumptions.
Yeah.
Which was driving all of society.
Yeah.
What were they changing? Where did that lead? It led to the American Revolution, and then it led to the French Revolution. And that was a mess, right? The American Revolution was a little bit bitter, but not really. But the French Revolution, that was a mess. They were leaving behind religion. The idea of assuming that there is a transcendent creating God in charge of everything, to the idea that no, there is no transcendent creating God. And to presume immortality, to presume that you have a soul that will last forever, immortal, that you are immortal. These are presumptions. They're happy dreams. But is it true? Examine this. That's where they're going. Overthrowing all of Western culture. Because Western culture was entirely based in
religion. Yeah.
Religion, because royalty were given their right to rule by God. God given. And they're throwing all that out. So they're getting rid of monarchy and they're getting rid of God. Well, that's huge, folks. That's huge. And that was the path that they were on. And by the way, they never got there.
No.
That's not settled. We certainly don't believe that God gave any ruler the right to rule, especially currently in the world. There are many rulers out there today that we're pretty sure that God did not help that. But the idea that there is no God and that there is no eternity and you don't have a soul, because we can't test it, we can't see it. So there are some people who ascribe to that. And there are other people who cannot. My brain tells me that it's an imagined folly. My brain tells me this. But my heart knows that the only reason I breathe air is to open my eyes in death and look into the face of Christ. My heart knows that. And it knows it way more than my brain knows that that's folly. So that's the thing that takes over when I'm suddenly in trouble. Yes, I realize I'm the guy who has to get me out of trouble. There's not going to be any divine intervention to get me out of whatever I've done to myself. But still, there's that hope in there. And I don't know if it's left over from being a little child and be utterly dependent on your parents, and that just transfers as you age to a deity because people tell you to and you do. I don't get it. It's all psychological and I don't know anything about that. But that's what these people were up to.
Yeah.
That's what they were trying to do. And that's huge.
Oh, it's big. Although thankfully, Cosi fan tutte, that they chose to leave religion for the most part out of it. Because it could have made it way more complicated.
Doesn't even come up. But Don Alfonso is your Diderot.
Yeah. He's our, like, I don't know,
perhaps your
spirit
Voltaire
guide or something, like taking us on this bizarre journey.
Well, you're a philosopher.
Yeah. He's. I mean, we keep joking. We call Malcolm. We were calling him Dadfonso for a while because he's the old man in the room, and then he shaved, and so now he's Uncle Fonzo. Because that's the opera too. Is everyone is it's always kind of like, okay, Alfonso, like, what's coming up next? And the way that Brad has set this whole thing up is that Alfonso is quite literally pulling the strings of every action. And when the military shows up and the chorus is singing Bella Vita Militar, that's Alfonso saying.
He's conducting them.
He's right there saying, get up and do your song. And he points out where Despina's hiding and under the table and everything at the end. And he's totally in charge of it all, which you'd think for two young, like, macho dudes, they might not be so keen on like doing everything that someone says, but for whatever reason, I've always wondered like why they go like, we'll do whatever you want, but that seems like
there's money in the game.
Yeah, there's money, but they go right for it,
and they're perfectly confident.
My God! The hubris is amazing. I mean, actually, like, I'm really enjoying getting to do a character like Guglielmo because, the last couple shows I've been two Scottish priests, a weird gossiping music teacher, and a blind philosopher. So I guess I was an Alfonso of sorts, but Colline didn't really care about any of that. But Guglielmo, like, his hubris is ridiculous. So he, once he runs off with Dorabella, and then he goes back to Ferrando, and he says, "Hey man, actually, maybe you should not have so much confidence in faithfulness and the world and all that." And I love Ferrando's like, "Oh, you're just playing a joke on me being so somber." And then when he figures it out, Guglielmo's response is to, rather than really be honest and like, dude, this is horrible. We need to stop this. Like,
Sorry.
we're ruining our lives. I'm really sorry I slept with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
But instead,
Wait a minute. We don't know that he slept with her.
whatever
They're just
he
gonna
did,
get married.
whatever he did with her.
They had fun.
Yeah, they had a good time. And but instead of doing that, he just kind of says, I don't really know what to say, bro. And off Ferrando goes with Alfonso.
Well, yeah, I'm very good looking.
Yeah, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, there's a whole part we're leaving out of this opera where Guglielmo really, he's a horrible person. And if you keep all the uncut stuff, he says, well, I have a little bit more to offer than you do.
Oh,
he says, un poco di più merito. And, and that kind of makes it all the sweeter than when Ferrando runs off with Fiordiligi and comes back and it's like, well, I guess I had a little bit more to offer. And then that's really good, but we're not using that part of it. And, he runs off with Dorabella, says, oh, hey, man, sorry, this happened. And Ferrando goes crazy and he turns to the audience and it's like, you women. I mean, really, it's that wonderful Mozart thing of breaking the fourth wall and saying, okay, all you women out there, you do this to everyone. You do it he doesn't say you do it to us, to noi. He says, a tanti e tanti, to so many guys. He does it. This is so great. And I love that scene because I get this aria all by myself with the audience and it's just saying that you do it to everyone, but of course you don't do it to me. He doesn't say that in the aria, but the asterisk to the entire scene is, well, except for me. Yeah. And then right in the next scene, he's watching Ferrando and Fiordiligi, and he's like, this is fine. It's going to be cool. It's going to be great. No worries. And then when she runs off with him, his world comes crashing down in this insane... I mean, it's so much more... Ferrando's crushed and sad.
But Guglielmo's really unhappy.
Pissed. I mean, because then it's really an attack on... I mean, this was so impossible, which is what's so great. And then we get to the finale, and the way we're doing it, it's like, Dorabella's so happy, and
finally, this is the day of my wedding.
I'm getting married. This guy's amazing.
And he's good looking, so
yes. And Guglielmo is just like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And then we have our resolution and everything at the end. But the question everyone always asks, right, is like, what happens afterwards? Mm-hmm. The end. The curtain comes down. They're back together. How do they? Where do they go from there? Like they've resolved it to a certain degree. I mean, that's a question I've continued to ask myself. Like, what is Guglielmo really feeling when he gets back with Fiordiligi? Is he satisfied with her? Is he not? Is she satisfied with him being kind of like a little bit of an arrogant prick? Like, that's kind of who he is a little bit. And, Dorabella, who's like changed so much, where is she?
She's so different.
Maybe Guglielmo's had a little air taken out of that ego.
Maybe. Yeah. But he's still like an 18-year-old guy.
But maybe he's had a little ego taken out of there.
No, he's definitely...
It could be.
It's been checked, I think, and I do think he has a greater understanding of what he has with Fiordiligi and how he should behave in the world. Mm-hmm. I wonder whether he'll continue, some people think that people never change. I don't. I wonder how profoundly... I know they do. I know they do. The thing we've talked about in rehearsal a little bit is like, do they still love their false partners at the end of the opera? And like, I firmly think that Guglielmo definitely still loves Fiordiligi, but I don't think he loves Dorabella at the end.
I don't think so. I think they had this big attraction because they have a lot of instinct. They are like animals, like a tiny dog and a tiny dog. They're just discovering who they are, and at least that's for Dorabella. Yeah, I think
we're way more physical.
It's more physical. But at least for my character, I feel like Dorabella is just young. When you are young, you don't have a clear idea of who you are. And with all this experience, and he discovers a new energy in this guy, in Guglielmo, and
who's totally different than Ferrando.
Exactly.
Yeah, they are very different.
Very different.
Yes, because Ferrando is sensitive and is like all these... Maybe it's more about like talking and everything, but with Guglielmo is like different sensations, right? Like they kiss, they touch each other. It's like... What is this? It feels good. But I think the beautiful thing about Dorabella for me is at the end, maybe she goes back with Ferrando because she discovers that she can have that with a person that she loves. With a person that's special like Ferrando. I mean, like, you have very different options.
Well, Ferrando kind of found his masculine side a little bit with Fiordiligi at the end. It took him most of the opera.
I have a theory about that, actually. The two people I worry about are actually the Fiordiligi and the Ferrando.
Yes,
they
are
wounded. By the end of the opera, they are truly wounded, both of them. She is disappointed in herself, and he is disappointed in all of womankind. And so they are both...
They've been way more disappointed than we have, I think.
But that's
their
very
feelings
strong.
seem to me to run deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And to carry more weight in their personalities.
Oh, yeah.
But Ferrando's music continually leads us, Aura Amorosa, which might be about the hardest thing to sing in the whole opera. I mean, that thing is hard. I used to be a tenor when I was a kid, and I got assigned to Aura Amorosa, and I didn't think I would ever
Thankfully,
master.
we cut Allo Veggio, which is, I think, that's the most evil, and nobody ever does it. It goes on forever. It's impossibly hard.
So hard.
And it's like Un'Aura, but a little faster and higher.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, but we're not doing that.
We always cut that.
We're not trying to kill David. He's far too sweet, and he sings Un'Aura far too well.
Nobody dies here. But I just do have the feeling that Fiordiligi and Ferrando, they have the hardest row to hoe ultimately just because of their personalities. They're more introspective. They have more faith in themselves. And Fiordiligi, suddenly her faith in herself is broken.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah.
And who's he?
Right.
It's I do agree that her and Ferrando kind of have a harder way back a little bit, because there's so much more. But I mean, you and Ferrando kind of snap right back together a little bit. At the end, that you're quicker to come back to each other.
I think so. I mean, this is being like an experimentation. That's the word. Yeah, for us, because I mean, I have different ways to play Dorabella at the end, and I can play with the, oh, look, I'm cute and you love me, so let's have fun. I can play with that. I can play with the, now I'm a woman, now I know, and I know I made mistakes, but I love you, I choose you, and this was a mistake, I mean, David is such a good actor. That's the thing. So it's very easy for us. It depends. Sometimes the intention change when we are in front of the other, because we have a different energy, and it's like, okay, let me follow you and let's find a way to be together. So yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think we are still trying to figure out how to be together at the end of the opera, but it's very beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
I cannot think of another opera that would engender this kind of discovery.
Oh, yeah.
No, there's nothing else that really... and it's so great because you get so many questions at the end, too. Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, in a good production, you walk away, I think, wondering about all of, life and love and all of that, because it just all sort of gets... thrown and jumbled together, and you walk out and it feels, it's kind of disorienting, but that's what's so real about it, is that it happens the way that it happens in real life. Like, why do people continue to forgive people who are horrible to them, or relationships that are terrible, people they stick together through it, or all of these things kind of get brought up in this. And
the cool thing about this is it's on the stage in front of you.
Yeah, you're watching it.
Where in other people's lives, they're really other people's lives.
Yeah.
And you don't get to examine. You don't get to look inside and go, what kind of personality would do that? Because you're not really privy. Because we do live private lives, and there's a public social life, but you don't know what's behind it. That's something that I learned watching an opera around here. It was A Streetcar Named Desire. And everybody, all the other characters in Streetcar, think that Blanche is just fine. Because she's putting out the good face, right? Let's make it pretty. Let's make it happy. Oh, come on in and sit down. Can I get you something? And you can't tell. You don't know that inside she is absolutely crushed, broken, and has no hope at all. Her life is over. Her interior is crushed. But you can't know it because she's all smiling and happy and, oh, let's go for a walk by the water. All that stuff is there. And I found myself in that rehearsal texting my friends to say, yeah, I've been thinking about you. I love you so much. Because I'm going, I don't know what's going on in their lives. I don't know if they're miserable.
If it's real.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening to them. They're far away from me.
Yeah.
And I just better remind them that they have somebody out here, that if there's something wrong, I'm out here. But I have come to think after I'm involved in opera in a very different way now, right? So for 30 years, I was producing something to do with opera, but now I'm starting my 4th year of actually producing shows. I actually produce opera, and I have to know a lot about everybody, and I spend a lot of time with scores choosing what I think is correct for these people and for this audience. And I've come to recognize that in my life anyway, what opera has taught me is empathy. Because you keep seeing people in conditions you will never be in. And because of the composer giving all that foundation underneath the text, that he guides your heart.
Oh, yeah.
So that you come to feel these emotions for these perfect strangers that you wouldn't even think about, right?
Yeah.
But there it is. And you learn empathy for their situations. I mean, there are obvious ones like Butterfly, right? That's obvious.
I was thinking in Butterfly, totally.
That's just really obvious. But even Figaro, I have genuine empathy for the Countess. Right off the bat,
How can you not? Well,
you have
hopefully
genuine
you do.
empathy for the Countess. But then I've started to gain empathy for Susanna and for Figaro, because if you've ever been the object of sexual harassment, and I have been, and you know what that's, I had to quit a job, I had to leave a job because I had a boss who was absolutely unrelenting.
No, it's terrible.
And I just had to get out of there. I couldn't keep the job. I had to leave, which was a good thing. I went back to graduate school, got another degree, and got me into this job. But you begin to see things very differently. And now, after all these years, I have genuine sympathy for the Count himself. His father would never have had to seduce a maid in the household. He'd have just had her and walked away. He wouldn't even thought about it. Oh, she's cute. He'd just go, what they say, tap that, as they say now, and walk off. And now he's got to seduce a maid in his household.
Well, and this is, to me, one of the really interesting things about performing these works from these kind of periods of time, where there's these social constructs that are so important to the plot that we have really no way of fully understanding, or
without a lot of reading.
Exactly. You the amount of research you have to do to really understand, okay, this is what daily life was like for these people. And I mean, because Fiordiligi and Dorabella are like, what, they're supposed to be like 14 or something, 15?
Dorabella, I think, is like 14 years old.
Dorabella's 14 and 16?
That's right. Yeah, I think that's right. 14 and 16. They're very young. And
Lord God, at 14, I'd gone to bed with anybody.
Right. So these are and the guys,
but that I won.
and the guys aren't old either. I mean, they're probably, they're in their early 20s, if that.
At the most.
Late
teens.
These guys are, all of them are, and even Alfonso and Despina, they're older, but they're not ancient. They're this
Alfonso, I think, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, exactly. They're not necessarily.
And our new Alfonso cover, he's 22, maybe.
Exactly. So to kind of wrap your brains around what it's like to be people of that age in that time, and I mean, it's so different.
Do realize we don't mature the way people mature.
No, they got to everything faster than we did, for sure.
At 13, you could be the king of France.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
At 13,
I mean, the guys, when they're really soldiers. They're
exactly.
They're actual kind of child. They've been soldiers. It's not when the opera opens, it's not like these guys have just gotten their first three-pointed hat and gone off to war for the first time. No, like they have been in the army for some period of time, and
and probably seen action.
Well, and I think they've been all seeing each other or courting each other for some length of time. It's not like, hey, I met this girl last week. Yeah, right. I feel like there has to be a little bit more.
You're already betrothed.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in a week.
Yeah, I think that they've been. They've known each other and been in some kind of a relationship for at least a little bit of time, and that they dive right into that, but they're still kids. I mean, that's what I always think about in our duet, is like that they're actually like two high school kids, if that, like freshmen, sophomores, like awkward. There's the recit before the duet is
oh my god, one of my favorite moments.
It's so fun.
But it's so difficult.
It's so difficult because the way that they write it, it
has to be fun, but it has to be honest, but it has to be, it's
so
like
uncomfortable. Because we sing. There's this little trio where, whatever scene where Alfonso and Despina kind of speak for the girls and the guys and say, okay, we're gonna properly apologize, and girls, now we're going to accept the apology and move on from here, and then they go away, and it's just the four of them on stage, and
no one can talk.
Nobody knows what to say. And it's so brilliant that Pierluigi just goes, oh, it's such a nice day. Okay, bella giornata. Like, oh, it's really, it's kind of hot and not really. and then you say, oh, like the trees are so pretty, and I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely, there's more leaves than fruit.
Oh my god.
And we're all just like, that is, we've all been there, like in high school, you go to some girl and you like try to say something really cool and your foot's in your mouth for 20 minutes.
I was so lucky at that age. I didn't talk to anybody.
It's so funny because we're up there acting that out and kind of reliving it. And,
yes, totally.
And then, of course, right out of that, we have, the glorious, beautiful duet, which is sort of what happens. But I love all the little like corners of this show where those really realistic and absurd things happen. Like, I mean, that's kind of I
that's
love that
the magic
scene.
of this show. It's very human.
It's not like the other Mozart da Pontes in that sense, I think. I mean, because the other ones are really real and human, but there still are. It's not like, I don't know, just normal people to me in that way.
It's all equals.
Yes.
Yeah.
In all the other operas, there's
class differences.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Leporello Giovanni relationship.
Same.
These are all like equal people, just being people, and like making mistakes and being stupid and being crazy and all of that just happening, kind of all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you get to throw pillows all over the place. And
oh my god, I love my pillows. It helps a lot, my staging, It's like I'm in emotion immediately. It's like first pillow and I'm angry and everything.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is how Mozart has, and da Ponte, I guess to have to say, maybe he's the guy, set up when are the moments that you can overact and be a caricature, and what are the moments when you must be a human being.
Oh yeah.
And at the beginning, the guys are themselves pretty much, but a little over the top in the academy, right? Yeah. They're over the top. No,
they're being extra macho, but they are Ferrando and Guglielmo, like.
Yeah. But they're still play acting.
Oh,
They're
yes.
putting on a show for
Okay.
Alfonso.
They're play
And
acting.
he baits him right into it.
And
It's
then,
great.
and then the girls are also, they're themselves, but they're play
Being
acting.
perfect. Yeah.
They're play acting.
Basically.
Now, then comes the time when the two boys come in disguise, and they're truly play acting, right?
Oh, and that's
everything
really fun.
exaggerated and everything over the top, and the girls
They're being real. It's like,
are being real,
Yeah.
and everybody gets more real and more real, and we get to see the boys have to go from when they're in their disguise and they're acting and they have the freedom to be not themselves, to be more than they normally are. But then they step out of the moment in disguise and we see into the heart of the human being. And it's in and out and in and out all night long. And if you're not aware of it, it doesn't matter because you're seeing it in front of you. And you know, okay, now she's telling the truth. Now she's playing coy,
yeah.
right? But you know she's playing.
How many hours of rehearsal have we spent on that?
Oh my God. It's what happened with our duet.
Yeah.
Totally. Because we are playing but not playing, and then is in what moment exactly this turns to be real.
Yeah. Am I the Albanian? Am I Guglielmo? Are you being like
a different version of Dorabella?
exactly?
Who I am.
They're always like figuring it out, and it all gets turned. I mean, I kind of love that it all flips. So like in the beginning of the opera, you're, you know, especially when we come in as the Albanians, we're totally faking it, and you're being so serious and real, and like you're, you know, sending us away. And then when Act 2, kind of like when we get to like the wedding, then the girls are so real and so like you know, you're really excited about your wedding, and we're totally full of crap. I mean, we're just faking through the whole wedding and being ridiculous. And then we all kind of figure out sort of who we maybe really are by the end.
And finally, in that final ensemble, and the rest of it leading up to the final ensemble, finally there, everybody is just a human being. Which is the goal from the beginning, you see. Because you weren't truly just human beings then. You had your pretensions on.
Yeah.
But by the time you get to the end, the pretensions have been ripped off. And the human being is revealed. And Brad was so convinced by this a rehearsal recently that he teared up in the last ensemble. He says, now they're real people and they're back together. So that was the whole point for him.
Yes.
So it did represent something.
No, that's where we hopefully end up.
Yeah, we're working hard.
If all goes according to plan, that's where we get to.
Yeah.
Oh, my dear friends, we've been at this for more than 50 minutes.
Ooh. Well, there's a lot of opera to talk about.
We lost all of our listeners about a half an hour ago. Well, thank you both for coming in and making the time.
Oh, thank you for having us.
And I'll try to be sure that the link to this gets forwarded to everybody so
it'll get sent around.
that you can have a good time. All right. Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks, Larry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.